They moved through ruined cathedral complex, passing between twisted statues, once representing saints of old, now their marble flesh rotten away, leaving only proudly standing skeletons, their names twisted into runes and cruel mockery of their sacrifices. Bones of the faithful were fused with the floor, their hands still joined in the sign of Aquila, their mouths still open in prayer, a calling for salvation that never came. Otvar looked back at his proud inquisitorial expedition. They were a sorry-looking bunch. Even mighty angels of death looked terrible, their armor shattered, their weapons broken, their bodies wounded. One marine was even limping, all bones in his right leg broken. The Kola Herat was still too weak to walk, and so Cassian carried her in his arms, Helena Vorhais keeping close to her new friend. They walked slowly, looking for threats, but being unsure if they could stand against anything in their current state. Then they found the first body. It was a knight in black and white armor, but this one wasn't half as massive as Voidheart. No, this one was just a mortal. Bigger than average and without doubt dangerous, but still just a mortal. His head was missing. They found it 12 steps away, laying on the edge of a small fountain. They kept their watch, ready for anything, but no threat came. They just found more bodies, all clad in black and white, all dead.
Impressive kills,
Orlon said, stopping before the fifth body. This one was pinned to the wall with her own blade, her arms still holding the hilt, even after being cut off from the rest of the body.
The Seeker must be one hell of a fighter to dispatch them in such style.
Tyrion agreed, taking a closer look.
These cuts were not made by a sword. Some kind of bladed stuff.
Cassian said, walking over, still holding Herat in his arms. Two Astartes turned to look at the one who was once an aspirant, before nodding their heads in agreement.
Indeed, little brother.
Orlon said with respect.
You have good eyes.
Cassian stiffened only slightly, before turning to the Astartes and giving him a slight incline of his head.
Thank you, big brother.
Cassian answered with a smile on his face. One of the reasons I became an aspirant. They continued walking, Otvar listening in with one ear.
It was the multilung, was it not?
Orlon asked, walking by the Cassian's side. The warrior nodded. It was. My body rejected it, yet I've managed to endure the pain. After failed surgery, I was given a choice. Selfishly, I decided to live for myself, rather than to die, or be a chapter serf. The two Astartes glanced at each other before Tyrion spoke.
Why?
On her deathbed, my grandmother told me that my destiny was among the stars. He smiled. She wasn't wrong. I found my purpose by the side of my lady." He bowed towards Vorhais, who gave him a little smile. "And I do not regret my choice."
The Emperor guided you on this path.
Shade, the Black Shield, joined the conversation, his unpowered armor being in the worst shape of all Marines present.
And we are lucky you found your way to this time and place.
Orlon started before stopping in his tracks.
Do you smell it, brothers?
Everyone stopped. Otfar as well.
Incense.
Shade said after a moment.
But not one I recognize.
Orlon added with a harsher note to his voice.
Inquisitor, I think I know where to find the Seeker.
Lead on. Otfar commanded and followed after the Astartes. As they traversed the massive temple complex, they found another 4 dead knights, each of them dispatched in a clean and efficient way. Otfar could recognize that. The Seeker was a blade master, and not just an ordinary one at that. Just by looking at the corpses, he could recognize that this person saw combat as a form of art, and he honed it to the point that few mortals could match him. They moved quickly between the ruins until Orlon stopped in his tracks, just as they reached a final room before the main hall of the cathedral. Otfar didn't need to ask what made everyone stop, as he saw the same thing that Astartes saw. A pile of bodies. Dozens of the very same beasts that swarmed them not long ago, laid in pieces, not far from the main door. "Emperor protects," Astra whispered in awe and fear. Otfar stepped forward, looking at the bodies. No one bullet wound, not mark of plasma or flamer. All were cut by a blade in a very similar fashion to that of a knight's. "How?" he asked, not believing his eyes. How could one Xeno kill that many of those monsters when elite soldiers of the Imperium and angels of death struggled to do the same? "The Seeker is smarter than we thought," Herat said in a weak voice, pointing up. "Look." And there it was. Just above the pile of corpses was a long wooden beam, very close to the ceiling, with a round extension in the middle, a place to which chandeliers were attached to.
He fought those beasts from up there.
Orlon asked, not hiding how impressed he was.
A sound defensive position.
Zahil Ordan of the Nova Marines said, looking up.
He limited their paths of approach and chose a position where they lacked the ability to reliably swarm him.
Otfar was about to say something, but a new voice joined the conversation. It wasn't so simple. The beasts know how to crawl on ceilings. An accented voice, speaking in understandable Gothic, reached them from beyond the door. It was a bit of a challenge. All turned towards it, their muscles tensing in a fraction of a second. But no attack came. Instead, the voice reached them once again. "Are you going to stand behind that door, or will you join me?" The voice asked. "I waited for you for quite a while now. Everyone looked at each other before looking to Otfar. The Inquisitor took a deep breath before stepping around the pile of bodies and coming to the door. He pushed and they opened without resistance. What greeted him was the smell of numerous incense, the ruined hull of a cathedral, and 2 dead bodies of the knights by the door. The 10th and 11th body. Then he saw his target. The Seeker was sitting on the other side of a massive chamber, near the altar. He sat on the stairs, a small fire burned next to him, and there was some kind of big kettle hanging above it. The Seeker had deep blue skin, far deeper color than most of his species. He wore bright, elegant, yet simple yellow robes, and a necklace that bore no jewels or gems. He opened his red eyes and smiled. "Ah, there you are. I was starting to fear you'd never reach me," he said, standing up and reaching for the kettle. "Please, join me. The tea is almost ready." Aun Kovash observed the humans with interest. There were more of them than he expected, and 9 of them were far bigger and far more armored and armed than any human he met before. They walked with caution, looking around, seeking traps. He almost laughed. "Och, don't be so paranoid. I do not intend you any harm. I don't even bite." He smiled towards the leading human male, who wore a simple black robe. "Besides, I'm quite outnumbered."
The beasts you've killed probably fought the same.
One of the giants spoke in a deep, harsh tone. "I suspect that the beasts weren't half as smart as you are," Ethereal retorted as he started pouring hot water to 5 cups before him. "Besides, I don't prepare tea for those. I intend to kill." He looked up at them. "I must apologize on that front, for I only have 4 cups for you. But I was told by a friend of mine that 4 should be more than enough. Though she did tell me to make sure one of them was very big and sturdy." He glanced up at them. "She warned me that your travel through the city wouldn't be a pleasant one." The newcomers looked at each other, with a mix of confusion, suspicion, and concern. "And who is your old friend?" the leading man asked again, still coming closer. "Oh, you wouldn't know her. A very big, scaly, long, over 7 centuries old, and she has terrible sense of humor." Ethereal chuckled as he put the kettle back over the fire and refilled it with water. The leading human was clearly still concerned as he stopped a few steps away from the tea. Aun Kovash could see him more closely now. He was an older human male. His black beard had strings of silver in it. His eyes were full of focus and zeal. "Are you the Seeker?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "I am," Aun Kovash answered with a smile, noticing the necklace on the human's neck. And you are someone who seeks the Seeker. And you wear the symbol of a sigillite, no less. He pointed at the stylized eye, hanging from the necklace. You must be a member of a dreadful inquisition. He looked at other humans. Most of you are, if I had to guess. He glanced at a female in a magnificent purple armor. Oh, and you must be one of the famous rogue traders, Vorhai's dynasty, judging by the colors. There was a moment of stunned silence as humans stared at him. He smiled. Oh, don't act so surprised. I'm sure you know far more about yourself than I know about you. He chuckled. The man before him managed to regain composure and straightened up. My name is Baltic Otfar. I am Inquisitor of Ordo Xenos, servant of the God Emperor. He boomed, staring up at him with eyes full of burning faith. My name is Aun Kovash. It translates to wandering light in your language. I am a seeker and a humble servant of a greater good. He answered in a calm tone before bowing deeply. It is a pleasure to meet all of you. When he looked up, he saw that the man who introduced himself as Otfar was perplexed, blinking in confusion. Thankfully for him, his companions came to his rescue. I am Vikola Herat, Inquisitor of Ordo Xenos. It is a pleasure to meet you as well, said a woman held by an above-average tall human male. I am Lady Captain Helena Vorhais, head of the Vorhais rogue trader dynasty, the woman announced proudly. I bid you welcome in the name of the God Emperor of mankind.
Sergeant Cassius Orlon of the Imperial Fist Chapter, leader of the Kill Team Griffin and overall commander of all Deathwatch members present.
One of the rumored Angels of Death removed his helmet and looked down at the Seeker, despite him standing on the steps.
We came to capture you,
he said bluntly. The other humans almost gasped at that, but Aun Kovash simply smiled. I am aware of that, Sergeant, the Seeker said with not a single note of malice. But before you do, I wish to speak with you. All of you. Will you join me? The Imperial Fist blinked in confusion, looking back at his fellow Starties and the mortals among them. You do not intend to fight back? Herat asked, tilting her head. He shook his head. I do not, was his simple answer. The humans looked between each other once again, confusion clear on their faces. Why? Rogue Trader asked, glancing back at one of his previous unwanted guests. We saw proof that you know how to fight. Aun Kovash smiled at that, a fatherly warmth emanating from him. Because I can see that you suffered much pain and strife in order to reach me here, Aun Kovash said, sitting down, cross-legged before the cups. And I will be glad to bring some measure of balance to that experience. He looked up at them, waiting for their response. You will die. Otvar stated in a grim tone. I know. Seeker nodded his head. Do you not fear death? Inquisitor asked. Aun Kovash had to thought about that for a moment before responding. I merely accepted. He answered with the same fatherly smile on his face as he removed bundles of herbs from each cup and placed them in small containers. Now, will you join me, or will you let the tea get cold? Otvar looked at the other 3 leaders present before stepping forward and sitting in front of a seeker. Moments later, Lady Captain Vorhais sat down on his right. Inquisitor Vojkola Herat was slowly lowered to her place on the Otvar's left. Finally, the massive shape of Sergeant Orlon stopped near the biggest and clearly metallic cup. Astartes turned a questioning look towards the seeker. My old friend warned me that I will be conversing with an angel of death, so I came prepared. Your mix of herbs is a bit strong for a standard human, but I do hope you will enjoy it. Seeker said with a small nod. Astartes took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a second.
I can taste no poison in the air.
And I detect none in those herbs, spoke twisted half machine, half man. The seeker rolled his eyes, not making a comment about their paranoia. He smiled before picking up his cup and bringing it to his lips, enjoying the aroma of his homeworld herbs before drinking. Reluctantly, all 4 servants of the Emperor took their cups, even Imperial Fist kneeling to join them. They all raised their cups and drank. There was a moment of silence before Rogue Trader spoke.
This is some excellent tea,
she said after a moment.
Such mix of flavors is not something I ever expected.
This one was made from more exotic plants from the Coalition. Aun Kovash said with a smile. I thought that a traveler, like yourself, would enjoy its taste. Herat spoke second, her eyes glinting.
I feel refreshed and calmed down,
she noted. This is the same tea my old friend enjoys. She shares your ability, Seeker specified. It resonates with your powers, calms them down, let them heal faster. Herat looked at her cup with new eyes before taking another sip. Space Marine drank the entire cup and put it down with surprising precision. He looked at the Seeker and nodded. Ethereal nodded back with a smile. Otvar spoke last, placing the cup down. This is bitter, strong tea, he said slowly before looking up at the Seeker. Your old friend told you what to prepare, didn't she? Aun Kovash shook his head. No. She merely said who I am to expect. Based on the description, I picked the tea that I thought you would enjoy. I see. Otvar answered, looking back at the half-empty cup, but not picking it up. If you need a refill, just ask, Seeker said with a slight chuckle. But now, I believe, it's time to speak. He looked between the 4 of them. Do tell why you came all this way to capture me, They looked between each other before Herat answered.
Your empire is a threat to the Emperor's domain, she explained. We need information, and you are an ethereal.
Aun Kovash froze for a moment and furrowed his brow. Empire? He asked, clearly confused. That's our designation for your state. The Tau Empire, Otvar specified. That's not even close to the official translation. Seeker looked at Otvar with an amused expression. Not to mention that this imprecision might cost you dearly. What if you sign a treaty with the Tau Empire, which could be interpreted as just the United Authority, but the rest of the coalition will continue to do what they want?
The coalition?
Orlon asked. Yes, the Tauva Coalition, official name of alliance of all species joined by the philosophy of a greater good. The Seeker confirmed, looking back at Herat. I apologize for interruption. Please continue. How does me being an ethereal helps you? Herat seemed confused at that.
You are an ethereal, one of a ruling caste.
I am also a seeker, someone who let go of the authority of a ruler to become a wandering monk, seeking greater truths of the one path. Aun Kovash retorted with a smile. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I know nothing of coalition secrets. We shall see about that, Otvar said in a dark tone. The Seeker looked at him with amusement. If you intend to torture me to get the information you need, you'll be sorely disappointed. He shook his head. I can't tell you about something I know nothing about.
Even if that's true,
Vorhai spoke in a measured tone,
you still possess valuable information.
To an extent, yes, Aun Kovash conceded. But I do wonder, why would you need to take such information from me by force, if much of what I know could be given to you willingly by coalition diplomats? Do not play dumb, Xenos, Otvar warned with a growl. You know precisely why we want to acquire the knowledge this way, and not the other. I do. And yet, the Seeker looked him straight in the eyes. I want you to say it. Otvar grimaced, angry at how calm the Xenos was, even facing the fearsome Inquisition. How he clearly knew more about the Imperium than he expected. War, he simply answered. The Seeker let out a small breath that echoed his disappointment. And why would you want to wage war against the coalition? Aun Kovash asked, taking another sip of his tea. Is it the hatred of non-human sentient life? Is it the fact that humans join our commonwealth? Or that we unite multiple species under one banner outside of control of your martyr emperor?
All of the above,
Herat answered.
And more besides.
Aun Kovash nodded his head before putting down his cup. Do you have another Macarius on hand? He asked.
What?
Vorhais asked back, clearly surprised by that question. Well, Coalition possesses around 1,000 worlds. The last commander in the Imperium's history that claimed to capture so many worlds was Lord Solas Macarius, was it not? Aun Kovash tilted his head. So, you would need a commander of his skill to accomplish similar goal, or even better than him, to avoid this nasty civil war I heard erupted moments after his death. Servants of the Emperor remained silent at that remark. I will take that as a no. The Seeker shook his head in disappointment. You aren't ready to defeat the Coalition, and seeing the state of your Imperium firsthand, you won't be for a very long time, if ever. You visited the Imperium? Otvar asked, his voice revealing that he was already trying to figure out how the Seeker managed to slip past his agents. Ethereal looked at him as if he was a dim-witted student. Of course I did, he said with a shake of his head. Look around. At that, Otvar gritted his teeth. This corrupted hellscape is not the Imperium, he protested. And yet, we sit under the statue of your Emperor. Or, well, what's left of it. Aun Kovash pointed at the twisted statue standing behind him. The warped image of a martyr king loomed over them, a sorry reflection of the Imperium. Otvar was grinding his teeth, but it was Herat who spoke. This world was lost by the Imperium. It doesn't represent our power, she tried to argue. Aun Kovash shook his head. No. This world was abandoned by the Imperium. Imperium of 1,000,000 worlds that couldn't spare vessels to save loyal citizens of this world. The Seeker scoffed. Not to mention, you yourself are proof enough of the nature of your Imperium.
What do you mean by that?
Orlon asked, a note of threat in his voice. Isn't it obvious? The Seeker asked, looking up at the Astartes. You arrived to this world to capture me, not to save it or what few loyal servants remain. His words struck them like a hammer. Otvar blinked in disbelief. There are loyal servants of the Emperor on this world? Only a handful, I'm afraid. The Seeker answered in a sad tone. Our initial expeditionary forces managed to evacuate small pockets free of madness of this world. Some of the survivors refused our help, said that the Imperium will come and save them. He looked up at the Inquisitor. I have a feeling that they will never see a day when you do. A shadow of shame passed through the Lady Captain's face. Even Imperial Fist cast his eyes down. Otvar just looked at him in disbelief, when Herat managed to keep her composure. The Emperor demands sacrifices of us all. She spoke with confidence in her voice. I'm sure he does. Ethereal answered with a note of sarcasm. And that's why you will never defeat the Coalition. You fight for the sake of an individual who died 10,000 years ago. We sacrifice ourselves for the sake of all for the greater whole, for the greater good. Otvar's face twisted in disgust. You truly believe your philosophy can challenge the might of a god emperor? I do not need to believe. I know it can. You wouldn't be here, desperate to defeat us, if a greater good wasn't a threat to your selfish religion. The Seeker shot back, his eyes narrowing. Entire worlds abandon their faith in your God King for the sake of a better future, for a simple reason that we give them what your Emperor cannot. Hope.
Hope is the first step on the path to disappointment.
Imperial Fist countered. The Seeker looked up at the Astartes with pity in his eyes. Hope is the strength to defy despair, Ethereal answered smoothly. Without hope, there is no reason to fight, and without fighting, there is no victory. He continued, to abandon hope is to surrender before the battle begins. Ethereal remained silent for a moment. Tell me, son of Rogal Dorn, did your father surrender when his traitor brother reached Terra? Imperial Fist seemed to recoil at that.
You know of Horus.
That was clearly a surprise to Imperials present, as the vast majority of the Imperium was unaware of the great treachery of the Primarchs. I do. I know quite a bit about how your Imperium began. I am aware that your Emperor had 18 sons, half of which rebelled against him. Seeker answered smoothly. I also know how your Emperor never wanted to be seen as deity, and yet here you are, calling him a god. The fact that this random Xenos from the eastern fringe of the galaxy knew so much was hard to comprehend. Otvar was first to react. How? How do you know this? Otvar demanded, nearly standing up, but being held in place by Herat, who shook her head to calm him down. Ethereal gave them a moment to communicate without saying a word, before Herat turned to him. How did you obtain this information? From what we know, your species wasn't spacefaring during the Great Crusade. He stated, remaining calm. You are correct. The Seeker finished drinking his cup before taking out the herbs and kettle. More tea for anyone? Herat and Warhais nodded, and he carefully put their designated herbs back into their cups and poured hot water into them. The second pouring should still be potent, he assured as he finished pouring for himself. And as you said, my people weren't active during the Great Crusade, but many of our allies were. Tarelians, who I believe you are aware of, had their homeworld destroyed by the 14th Legion of Space Marines. He fell silent, waiting for them to continue.
The Death Guard.
Orlon said with venomous hatred in his tone, which was totally at odds with his usual stoic nature. Indeed, and they were commanded by Primarch Mortarion himself. He was still loyal to the Emperor then, The Seeker continued. Many other species that joined the coalition witnessed much before joining our Commonwealth. Some are older than humanity itself, if records are to be believed, he explained calmly. Otfar furrowed his brow, suspicious. And out of all those species, the Tau are ones in charge, he said in a doubtful tone. We are great unifiers, Ethereal answered smoothly. We are also the strongest of our allies, and our philosophy is appealing to them, especially with your destructive Imperium or other horrors of the galaxy being the alternative.
You seem confident despite the fact that many of those species you speak so fondly of, Imperium managed to defeat in the past.
Vorhais tried to sound confident.
You think we won't be able to do it again?
To their surprise, Aun Kovash nodded his head. That is precisely what I think.
Hubris!
Otfar spat. Is it? The Seeker asked with a tilt of his head. Think about it. Yes, your Imperium managed to defeat some of the species that are now part of a coalition. But when you accomplished that, they were alone. He trailed off, letting them to fill up the blanks.
And now they are not.
Vorhai said with a note of fear in her voice. And now they are not. Not to mention, they learned much from their defeat. The Seeker sipped from his cup. In the end, this will be the main reason why you will wage war against us, Inquisitor, he said, turning towards Otfar. Not our philosophy, not that we can convince human worlds to join us, but because we know how to unite different species under one banner, many of which you've made your enemies. The Seeker leaned in. Think about hundreds, thousands of species your Imperium managed to defeat. Think about those survivors lost between the stars on their rescue ships, looking for a safe harbor. And now they will see the shining lighthouse of a greater good, the safe harbor of a coalition. He put down his cup and the echo it made sounded like a thunder inside the ruined cathedral. The weight behind those words wasn't lost on anyone present. This was the most catastrophic scenario one could imagine. All enemies that Imperium gathered over 10 millennia of crusades and genocides united under one banner, ready to take vengeance upon the Imperium. The Seeker let out a sad sigh, yet said nothing, waiting for them. But this time, no one spoke for a long time, clearly digesting the new outlook on the wider situation. Suddenly, the Crusade became a far more pressing matter than any of them could suspect. Finally, it was Helena Vorhais who spoke.
Why did you come to this world?
She asked, changing the subject.
It's a hellscape, world twisted by madness. Why come here?
This wouldn't be the first hostile world that my people managed to heal and settle, Aun Kovash answered. But it was mostly initial reports and testimonies from survivors we saved that got the attention of Ethereal Council. They asked for me to verify them personally. He checked the fire under the kettle, adding few small twigs. I was also approached by my old friend, telling me that if I visit this world, I will meet my end. But it will be for the sake of a Tauva in the end.
What did they want you to confirm?
She asked. There are certain symbols and wording that is familiar to my people, Tau said after a moment. Our suspicions were confirmed. This world is lost. It is Mont Tau.
A what?
Herat asked, clearly intrigued. The seeker was silent, uncertain how to begin, before putting down his cup and taking a deep breath. Your species experienced an event in the past that still echoes to this very day, a fear ingrained into your collective psyche. He began. The age of strife. Imperials tensed at that. It was a natural reaction. What happened by the end of a dark age of technology dictated what humanity would become. My species has a similar event in our history. Similar in effect it had on our species, while lacking the scale of yours. Tau continued. We call it Mont Tau, the Terror. An age when the Tau were blindly killing each other for selfish reasons. A madness took over our world, and the Tau would never leave their world if not for my caste, the Ethereals. We brought an end to the Mont Tau. We brought harmony and peace that broke the age of terror. Since that day, no Tau ever killed another Tau, for to do so would mean to return to that dark age, an age of madness. He looked through the window into the surrounding ruins. The same madness that took this world. Mont Tau rules this world, and worst of all, there are those who worship it. The black and white cladded warriors. Otvar asked, suddenly far more intrigued than before. Yes, although they do not call themselves the Knights of Mont Tau or Knights of Terror. The Seeker took another sip of his tea. They call themselves Knights of Malice. Otvar, Vorhais, and Orlon all seemed unfamiliar with that name. But the Kola Herat, oh, she went at least 3 shades paler after hearing that name, as if remembering something that she wanted to forget.
The renegade god,
she whispered, clutching the symbol of Aquila in her hand. All eyes turned to her. Otvar was first to speak. What are you talking about?
Malice. It is one of the chaos gods, a minor deity of the warp,
she said after a moment.
I only know rumors and whispers. Inquisition rarely deals with his influence, but I know he represents total anarchy. True chaos, absolute state of madness.
She took a sharp breath.
11. 11 is his holy number. Voidheart. He was from 11th Legion and 11th Company. We saw 11 of his dead champions on our way here. It was right there, and I didn't see it.
Inquisitor cursed herself, taking deep breaths.
That's why there are so many anomalies on this world. The things we saw are, but aren't like demon hosts. Malice doesn't have demons, so it created a parody of them, mocking the other gods.
The Psyker Inquisitor was starting to lose it, as comprehension of what she witnessed before finally hit her. Otvar was afraid he would need to restrain her, only to small sound to cause Herat to stop. The Seeker was holding a small bell. It was its sound that cut the growing fear of a Psyker. She blinked a few times, clarity returning to her eyes, before she turned them towards the small object. It was made of white alloy that she couldn't recognize, and decorated with symbols used by the Tau. She looked up at the Seeker, who gave her a calming smile. As I said, my people know Montau. It's an old enemy, and we defeated it in the past. He said calmly, putting down the bell without it making any sound, and picking back his tea. You should drink more, Inquisitor. It will help. Herat heeded his words and drank from the cup, longer than before. She let out a breath and looked at cross-legged Tau with deeper respect than before. All of them did so.
That's how you survived here.
Orlon stated rather than asked.
You know how to fight the things we faced.
It's a bit more complicated than that, the Seeker answered. But in a sense, yes.
And you killed 11 champions of this malice?
Orlon asked. Permanently, yes. The Seeker answered with a nod.
Elaborate.
Space Marine asked, guessing there was more to it. The Seeker looked up at the Imperial Fist. This cathedral is cut off from the rest of the city, surrounded by a ravine too deep to traverse. I had to use the bridge, the same you used to come here.
You've managed to defeat Voidheart.
Imperial Fist asked in disbelief. The Seeker gave him a small nod. But I didn't manage to kill him. No one can. Otvar smiled at that. You are mistaken, Xenos. Voidheart is gone, alongside his bridge. The Seeker tilted his head at that and let out a sigh. Really now? He pointed to one of the windows. What's that then? The moment they saw what he was pointing at, they stood up in disbelief. There it was, the very same bridge they crossed, untouched and unbroken. But it was in a completely different place. Voidheart and his bridge can't be destroyed, the Seeker said as he started cleaning the empty or knocked over cups. They belong to Montau now. They are its plaything. They will endure as long as does their master. He looked up at the shocked inquisitors and the rogue trader. And I doubt you have enough firepower to kill the renegade god. Orlon growled, seeing the bridge.
I've lost 3 of my brothers there. Inquisitor!
He turned to Otfar.
We need alternative point of extraction.
There is no clear landing zone in the Temple District,
Herat countered.
You saw it yourself, Sergeant. Rubble and trees made of metal and marble. There is no way even Avaris can land here. And I do not fancy trying to jump from the edge into a hovering transport,
Vorhais added with a frown. As the humans discussed what to do, Aun Kovash calmly packed his tea set into a wooden box, which he put on his back, before walking over to the altar and picking up his staff. As he did, many of the humans turned their attention back to him, now seeing that he was armed. His staff was a finely made instrument of war. On the bottom was a polyhedron-shaped weight for breaking bones and pushing enemies aside. The other end was crowned with a finely made circular blade, designed in such a way to match the symbol of the United Authority and Tauva. But it was something that was incorporated into the very length of the staff that caught people's attention. There were small openings, with very small bells in them, 5 to be exact, with some unseen mechanism that would allow them to move and play their tune. Aun Kovash smiled. Well, where are we going? The humans were silent for a moment, uncertain how to answer. Vorhais finally spoke.
We want to reach the spaceport.
The Seeker nodded. I know where it is. Let's go. And how do you intend to reach it? Otfar asked, still uncertain if he should try to stop the Xenos by force.
Voidheart guards the bridge. He won't let us pass.
Aun Kovash laughed at that. He didn't stop me reaching this place, and he won't stop me from leaving. Servants of the Emperor watched dumbfounded as the Xeno monk, with only a staff in his hand, a wooden box for tea on his back, and covered in yellow robes, moved towards the exit without the fear of a monster waiting for them on the bridge. They followed after him, not seeing much in terms of alternatives. The moment they exited the temple complex, they've noticed that the bridge was back where they saw it the first time. It was empty once again. A lie they all knew. Everyone looked tensed and ready for a fight. All but Aun Kovash. He looked more serious than before, but there was no killing intent in his eyes. The moment he stepped onto the bridge, Voidheart materialized in the middle of it. He was leaning on the soul shredder, tossing a round object up into the air and catching it again and again. The Tau didn't seem concerned as he calmly walked forward, the inquisitorial expedition not far behind him. As they closed in, they recognized what Knight of Malice was playing with. It was a helmet of a space marine. Its design and markings matched that of Sergeant Cassius Orlon, who walked right behind the Seeker, still alive and noticeably not missing his head or helmet.
Greetings, wandering light.
Voidheart said with venom in his voice. Good evening, Voidheart, the Seeker answered in a casual tone.
Are you leaving already?
The Knight of Malice asked, looking into the dead eyes of Astartes' helmet.
Eager to leave this place, aren't you?
I walk where the one path leads me. Aun Kovash answered calmly. Voidheart threw the still bleeding Orlon's head under the towel feet.
And you truly believe I will let you leave? You are stuck here. He wants you.
The monstrous thing grabbed the Soul Shredder and growled. Do you really want to embarrass yourself in front of the servants of a martyr god? He asked. You didn't stop me before, and you won't stop me now. The thing let out an animalistic sound of rage and fury.
You got lucky,
The thing said as its muscles tensed.
You won't get lucky this time.
I disagree. With a seamless move of a thumb, Aun Kovash unlocked the first of the bells. Luck had nothing to do with it. He hit the ground 5 times in short succession. Voidheart roared in pain, each ring of a bell pushing him slightly backwards. I speak the first truth. Unity overcomes division. Montau feeds on isolation and discord, but I stand as a part of a whole. Where one falters, many rise. Our bond stronger than any lie of darkness. In the harmony with Tauva, I find strength beyond myself. The Seeker spoke in melodic tone.
You cur!
Voidheart spat, brandishing Soul Shredder.
I will shove those bells into your throat!
Another seamless move of a thumb, and the second bell has been unlocked. The staff hit the ground another 5 times, this time creating a clear rhythm and pattern with each strike. The Knight of Malice was pushed back, his boots scraping the surface of the bridge as sparks flew in all directions. I speak the second truth. Creation defines destruction. Montau offers only the promise of ruin, but where it seeks to tear down, I build. Each step on this path brings forth new purpose. Every act of creation is a defiance of oblivion. The Seeker didn't slow down his pace.
You wretch! I won't let you get away!
The Knight moved forward, charging at the Seeker. Another click. The third bell has been unlocked. The staff hit the ground 5 times once again, but faster than before. Voidheart was flung back as if he was hit by a thunderhammer wielded by a dreadnought. He fell to the ground, a dozen of meters away, forced to sink his blade into the bridge to stop himself from tumbling further. I speak the third truth. Purpose shatters despair. Montau thrives on emptiness, on the absence of meaning. But I walk with purpose, my actions tied to the greater good. In purpose I find strength to banish the formless void. Aun Kovash spoke with greater might now than before.
Your Tauva is a lie. There is no purpose other than chaos.
Voidheart roared as he straightened up.
And the despair that will consume you all.
Voidheart screamed his rage as he dashed forward so fast that Astartes could barely follow his movement. Aun Kovash didn't rise to the challenge. Instead, he unlocked the fourth bell and moved like a dancer, hitting 5 spots around himself. Voidheart was ready this time, biting into the bridge with his blade and holding it with both hands. And although he was pushed back, creating a rift that revealed the oblivion below, he wasn't pushed as far as before. Cracks appeared in his armor, alongside few streams of white and black liquid that replaced his blood. I speak the fourth truth. Balance overcomes turmoil. Montau is erratic, violent, and unbound. But I walk the path of harmony. The greater good is the guiding hand that keeps all things in balance. Where Montau sows disorder, I restore equilibrium with wisdom and calm. There was no hatred, nor blind devotion in the Seeker's voice. He spoke as if it was the simple truth of things, a simple fact.
This galaxy is chaos.
Voidheart roared his defiance.
It was that way since before even my species could even walk.
He mustered his strength to charge the Aun Kovash once again.
Since the war between the first gods, it was chaos that ruled this universe.
Aun Kovash didn't flinch as the Knight of Malice jumped a dozen meters into the air, Soul Shredder raised up and ready to strike down to cut him in two. He unlocked the fifth bell and hit the ground 5 times, each strike creating a harmonious tune of all 5 bells. Voidheart was hit with the force of a quake cannon, his armor shattering and breaking as he was sent all the way to the other side of the bridge, where he came to a stop, right before leaving its boundaries. The Seeker walked smoothly between the rubble and gaping rifts leading to oblivion. With each step, his staff hit the ground, and with each tune of 5 bells, Voidheart was pushed down into the ground, forcing him to lay there, groaning in pain. I speak the fifth truth. Hope eclipses oblivion. Montau thrives in hopelessness, yet my heart is a beacon of hope. Hope is not the lie of despair, but the will to rise and to overcome. The true light of hope cannot be consumed, by even the deepest darkness. Seeker fell silent as he stood over the night. He could see it now. He wasn't wearing the armor. He was the armor. It fused with his being completely. There was no distinction between flesh and metal. All were corrupted in equal measure. A line of sharp teeth was revealed where the helmet shattered. A pair of hateful eyes looking up at him.
He marked your species.
Voidheart wheezed.
You cannot escape him. Montau will prevail. Chaos will consume all. Tauva won't save you.
The pitiful slave of Arch-Anarch declared. Aun Kovash spun his staff, now pointing a circular blade at the Voidheart's face. Yet despite how much Voidheart wished for it, there was no hatred in the Seeker's eyes. Just sadness, regret that he couldn't be saved. Leave was the Ethereal's simple command as he lightly tapped the knight's head with his staff, all 5 bells letting out a unite sound. Voidheart disappeared before the sound did. The Seeker let out a measured breath and looked at the humans who were standing behind him. All looked at him in disbelief. He smiled, looking all 5 bells with one move, before stepping on the other side of the ravine. Come now, the spaceport isn't far, he said with the warmth of a shepherd, leading his flock. Helena Voorhuis didn't know what to make out of Aun Kovash as they moved back to the spaceport. They exchanged few words as they walked. What they saw on the bridge was still hard to believe. The thing that killed 3 Astartes and wounded the remaining 9 was tossed around by bells and words alone. And yet, Herat felt no tinge of the immaterium from the Seeker. He was a mystery, one that was willingly walking with them to his own death. He led them to the spaceport, just as he promised. From time to time, he unlocked one of the bells and let its tune echo through the ruins, forcing whatever would try to sneak up to them away. Not a single horror revealed itself this time. No beast and no monster dared to as much as peek in their direction. The music of the Seeker forcing them back into the darkness. As they approached the small fort that was raised around their landing zone, many eyes looked at the alien with disbelief. He walked with no fear and no hatred, as he passed between the guards and stopped near machines. His eyes landed on the gun cutter and Ulrich standing near the entrance, alongside a few scions who had their guns aimed at him. So, it will be this vessel that will carry me to my death. Aun Kovash spoke in smooth Gothic, shocking all who didn't hear him speak before. A fitting coffin. He chuckled before turning to the inquisitorial expedition that followed him all the way here. He looked at each of them in turn, remaining silent, thinking, before letting out a slight chuckle. All is sacrifice. To be a seeker is not for those who seek power, glory, or reward. It is a path of giving, to give to others, even if nothing is left for oneself. He muttered to himself, as if remembering something he almost forgot. He stepped towards Helena and with big smile presented her with his staff. Rogue Trader blinked, unsure what to do. "Please, take it." He smiled at her with kindness in his eyes. "It's my Vash Arun, light of the path, the staff of a seeker. I think you will be able to appreciate it and keep it safe. And in turn, when the hour is at its darkest, it will keep you safe." Gingerly, she took the staff and gave him a small nod of thanks. The seeker was already putting down the wooden box with his tea set before the Kola Herat. The tea you enjoyed is inside, as well as notes how to make more. In the times to come, you will need it, he said with a warm smile. The Kola Herat looked down at the box, then back at the seeker, and bowed her head without saying a word. Next, Aun Kovash walked over to Orlon, who towered over him in his armor. The Tau pulled out a small bell out of his robes and presented it to the Astartes. "The bridge of no tomorrows is bound to no place and no time, son of Dorn," the seeker said in a far more measured tone. "Void Heart managed to kill you more than once. You saw it yourself. He might try again. If you encounter him, use it to force him back into the realm from which he came." The Imperial Fist was silent since seeing his own head rolling on the bridge. Now he extended his hand and with utmost care took the bell offered to him.
"My thanks,"
Astartes spoke, with a true note of gratitude in his words. Finally, Aun Kovash turned to Baltic Otfar, who eyed him suspiciously. He smiled at him, pulling out something that resembled a rosary from his robes. It was made of some kind of wood, with 5 big spheres on it, with 5 smaller spheres in between the big ones. It was hard to see, but each ball was inscribed with Tau words. The seeker extended his hand. "And to you, Baltic Otfar, I give Tauva Gera, the chain of a greater good, and the 5 truths inscribed upon them," he said with the voice of a teacher. "I need only one truth, that of a god emperor," Otfar stated with narrowed eyes. "If you only see one truth, you will remain blind," Seeker said in a calming tone. "You should open your eyes to one more truth for a start, that there is more than one or 2. Herat's eyes were glued to Otfar, the tarot card of a blind inquisitor still present in their minds. Slowly, Otfar reached up a hand and took the Xeno rosary without saying a word. The Seeker smiled. "There are many truths out there, Inquisitor." His smile faltered for only a moment. "But there is only one path." He extended his hands and waited silently. Otvar looked at Ulrich and nodded. His pilot walking over and putting cuffs on the Seeker's wrists. With a dull click, his fate was sealed. Yet he remained calm. He looked at all of them, and after a moment he clasped his hands together and bowed deeply. None said a word as he turned towards the cutter, slowly walking up the ramp with the same fatherly smile on his face with which he welcomed them. The wandering light stepped into the shadows of the Imperial machine. He stepped into the embrace of his own death, with no regrets and peace in his mind. Whatever he did, wherever he walked, he served the Tauva. And that was enough.